Hello again. This is for Unit 7 for English 002, writing assignment comparison contrast. Now, I think we all do this kind of evaluation all the time. Something is better than something else, um, or something, part A is wonderful and part B is awful. Um, in this case, your comparison contrast, your topic is the best course you've ever taken and the worst class you've ever taken. And your task then is to explain how they contrast. Okay, what did this one do really well that this one didn't? And then also what you learned from each of those impacts. Okay, so at the beginning, I would encourage you to basically do a free write on each of these experiences. So you can get down on paper as quickly as possible kind of the bulk of your information. So when I ask you, okay, what's the best class you've ever taken? Didn't say easiest, didn't say hardest, best. Okay, what does it mean to be a best class? Maybe you want to start your kind of pre-writing with, okay, in order for a class to be considered the best, it has to have these elements. I had a class, when I was in elementary school or when I was in high school or even, at a different college or this college or whatever. Um, Best class ever. Okay. And think about all the things that you remember and you enjoyed about that class and how well it taught you and what you learned and all of that. And just give yourself a good 10 or 15 minutes to just kind of barf all that out. And then get up, walk around, go to the bathroom, have a cup of tea, whatever you got to do to kind of go, okay, next. Worst class ever. Okay. Um, Again, doesn't matter when you had this class, whether it was actual school class, it could be, um, maybe you took a community class or you had a really bad experience with a particular sports coach or something like that. Okay, so then sit down and do the same thing. Okay, what are all the things that made it horrible? Um, what did you learn about yourself, about the class, about the topic, all that kind of stuff from it being so bad? One of the things that you're going to have to do in this paper is to choose which things you want to compare and contrast. You don't have to do them all. This is, not supposed to be a dissertation, so not hundreds of pages or anything like that. Um, but you probably want to have 6 or 7 paragraphs, right? And so this particular topic is easy in one hand because we've all had really good educational experiences and really bad educational experiences, unfortunately. Um, you can organize this two basic ways. One, point by point, and you talk about both classes in each paragraph that way, or class by class, and you talk about each of the points. Okay. Whichever way you do, make sure you keep the internal elements in the same order. Okay. So if you choose to go point by point, decide which of the two classes is going to go first. Okay. So am I writing best, worst all the time? Or am I writing worst, best? And then stick with it the whole time. If you're going to do one class, your best class, and then your worst class, make sure that you keep the points between the two, okay, things that you're comparing and contrasting, um, in the same order, okay. Now, the other part of this is that your first paragraph has to offer an introduction to the topic of best class, worst class, and your take on it, okay. Now, I will say at my current point in my life, I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for a while, but I was a student for a long time too, and sometimes both at the same time. Well, most of the time, both at the same time. And I think my worst class was this particular literature class I took as an undergrad. And the work and the concepts and the reading and all that was not bad. Okay. It was the teacher. Um, and this guy was horribly, horribly chauvinistic. Um, and like he never called on a female in the class ever. We could raise our hands, didn't matter. Um, there were other things that went on there too. But I learned more in that class about what not to do as a teacher, not just the chauvinistic part, but the tone of the class and the way everybody felt in that class, um, including the male students. Um, it was definitely not something I ever want to perpetrate in my own classroom. And so you can have that kind of a perspective. Okay, what did I learn about myself? What did I learn about what kinds of circumstances I thrive in as far as class goes? Okay, do I need weekly homework? Do I need um, a lot of feedback? Do I need a lot of time? How many times do I have to read stuff? I was an English major, so we read a lot. Sometimes in 3 different classes, I would be reading a novel a week. Um, so that was challenging, to say the least. I love to read, but oh my goodness, this particular um, way of writing, though, is something that you're going to be asked to do over and over again in most of your other classes when you're writing things, even if it's just a quick thing. Okay. For example, say you're in culinary and you have to compare and contrast these two cakes. Okay. Everybody had the same recipe, everybody was supposed to do the same thing. There's obvious differences here. Where did this one do well? Where did this one do well? Where did this one not do well? Okay. Those kinds of things come up all the time. Um, and so it's a good practice here to take something that you already know and compare and contrast it. Okay. The hardest part about most comparison contrast assignments, and this one is sort of like that, is that you could compare and contrast anything, right? The room was too cold. Um, it was right after lunch. This one was right after lunch, so it's a bad class. This one was first thing in the morning, so it's a good class, or vice versa. Depends on, night owl, morning person kind of thing. Um, but make sure that you choose things that are important enough to talk about, that are helpful for yourself, but also helpful for your reader. And there's one more little wrinkle in this one. Okay. You need to include in your paper at least at least 3 examples of figurative language to make your writing come alive. Now, there are foundation lessons in this unit on figurative language, so you can kind of see what that looks like, what we're talking about here. Make sure that it fits. It's not just thrown in there because you have to do it, okay? And make sure that it's also useful for your paper. Don't just add things in because you gotta. Make it work, okay? That's what gets you the best grades on these, okay? So make sure that you have both of these events, occurrences, very, very clearly in your head. Best way to do that is write it down. And then think about how they are similar and different in the same category down the bottom. Okay, so your main points can be 1 similarity between the two and 2 differences. They can be 2 similarities and 1 difference. Okay, so, or you can do 2 and 2. Okay, it's okay. Make sure that you use good examples, that you write them out. Remember, if you're going to use dialogue at all, you need to punctuate it correctly, format it and punctuate it correctly. Make sure that you're looking at a really clear organization pattern, either subject by subject or point by point, and that you stay in the same order in each of those all the way through. Um, Again, this is probably a 2-page paper, maybe 3. Now, you can obviously go longer than that. That's totally okay. Make sure that you also use the meal um, paragraph organization so that your linking from one idea to the next isn't real abrupt. Okay. So we will have a rough draft, and then I'll look at it, and you'll have a second rough draft, and I'll look at it again, and then your final draft is the one that gets graded. So do what you need to do. If you have questions, you know how to get a hold of me, email or text. Okay. Have a great day.